Greetings, Shelpers, and welcome to another paranormal stream. I'm not sure how long this one is going to be or what else is going on, and I forgot the disclaimer, so I will just say right now that this is for entertainment purposes only. Normally I write that on here, but I don't seem to have it. So while husband's retrieving that, I hope everyone is well because it's been a while. I haven't been streaming and uploading because life's been hectic. I don't know if you can actually see what he's writing until it's done. But yeah, we've been going through a lot. This is not the stream for it, basically, but there we go. For entertainment purposes only. Right there. So, what that means is, if you think I'm lying, then it's for entertainment. If you think I'm telling the truth, well, still for entertainment, but, you know. Okay, so the story starts before I even got on the scene. My family, as we all know, lived in Wisconsin, as I do now, how do I put this? On land owned by my great whatever grandfather. And my grandma owned the back 40. And it used to be a farm. Well, my grandparents lived in Milwaukee at one point for a lot of years, and that's where my mom grew up. But they would come to the family farm once in a while to stay. So they made a deal for a trailer to put on the property. And it was a 3-bedroom trailer with paneled walls and a small kitchen and a bathroom near the end of the hall. And down the hallway at the very end of the trailer was the back bedroom. Now, my grandparents would stay here like on the weekends or whatever, coming up for vacation, because a lot of the family lived around the area. So at one point, my mom's younger brother and his wife needed a place to stay in the mid to late 80s. At the time, they had at least 2 of the 3 girls they would have with them. And I don't remember why they needed a place to stay, but they did. And I think they stayed probably just a few months, but anyway, they moved in and it was okay at first. And then they noticed odd things like shadows darting in the corner of your eye, and there would be like other little things like that. But our family believes in the paranormal, so it wasn't out of the question. I remember asking my grandmother where they got the trailer from, and she said they got it from some guy, and something about something going wrong, but he had to sell it. I don't remember quite clearly enough, but it was just this really weird story about this one guy who didn't want to be in it, and they had sold it, and then Grandma and Grandpa had bought it. Hi, Lady Random, how are you? So while my aunt and uncle, ex-aunt and uncle, I don't talk to them anymore, had lived in the trailer with their kids, not only would they see things and like hear footsteps and whatnot, but they would hear knocking on the wall. I'm sorry you're tired. And the knocking would be purposeful. And it wasn't a tree branch and stuff like that. Sometimes when you hear knocking, I just basically got started. Sometimes when you hear knocking on the walls in the trailer, it wasn't always on the outside. Sometimes it would be on the interior walls. So they would hear knocking, purposeful knock, knock, knock. And then there was the cold. The trailer was cold. Now, I got to admit, the trailer was always a bit drafty. It was an old thing. It was one of those like tin siding type trailers, but it would not go above like 60 some degrees in the trailer. Like at all, ever. And no one knew why. They called out the repairman to look at it, and he couldn't find anything wrong. And a couple of the relatives came in to look at it. They couldn't find anything wrong. They would turn the heat up as high as it would go, and it would never kick on. Never. And even when it would kick on, it was like it wasn't doing anything. So it was always cold in the trailer. Well, one day the knocking got really bad, and the aunt had seen something so bad that had scared her that, and I don't know what this is to this day, that my grandma went in with her. She has we had a cross on the wall in the trailer where the top opened up, and on the inside were candles and stuff. Like, I almost want to say an exorcism kit, but I don't think that's what it was. But it held candles and this kind of like cloth thing and a few other accoutrements, like holy accoutrements. And my grandmother had a vial of holy water. And she took that cross and she walked through the trailer, like blessing it. She walked through saying prayers and getting rid of everything and anything that was bad. And after she did all that, she walked through and the heat kicked on and the trailer warmed up. And the rest of the time that my aunt and uncle had lived there, the activity had cut way down. There was really not very much knocking, and the trailer was warm. But they moved out soon after. Okay, so that was to the mid to late 80s. In 91, in November, my mom, two older brothers, and I moved into the trailer because my parents were getting a divorce. So at the time, I was a few months shy of being 7 years old. So we moved up, and we basically lived by Madison. So it was like a suburb of Madison. So we moved up here, and we stayed in the trailer, and it was a hard adjustment, but it was okay. It was nice to be around family. But every once in a while, as we grew older, we would hear knocking on the walls of the trailer. Like purposeful knocking. And at first we're like, is that a tree branch or whatever? But sometimes it would be like, we'd be sitting on the couch and we'd hear knock, knock, knock right by our heads. And it would freak us the fuck out. And my mom always told us, when you hear knocking, you say, go away. You say, you cannot come in, go away. We don't want you here. Something along that line. That you just basically tell it to go away. And I said to my mom, can I just like ignore it? She said, I guess you could, but I would just say go away. And I'm like, well, Mom, couldn't it just be something else? Like the old furnace or something else? And she said, just to be safe. Now, at the time, I was not aware of the stories of what my aunt and uncle had gone through in the house with the trailer with the knocking and the cold and all that. Like, if we were told, we were only told like bits and pieces when we were little, because I guess Mom didn't want to scare the ever-living shit out of us, which I understand as a parent. So for years, that's what we did when we heard the knocking, and then we wouldn't hear the knocking, and then we would hear the knocking. It wasn't an everyday occurrence or anything. So when my baby brother was born, he was born to that aunt and uncle that had lived in the trailer. And he would stay with us a lot as a kid. And every once in a while, when you hear the knocking and whatnot, I was like 10 years older than my baby brother. And well, of course, I still am, duh. But I would always tell him, okay, little brother, when you hear the knocking, just say, go away. We don't want you here. Now, baby brother was about 6 years old, maybe. I honestly forget, but that sounds about accurate. And one day he was staying overnight, and all of a sudden comes the knock, knock, knock. Very deliberate, right near where we were sitting. And I said, go away, go away. And it happened again. And my baby brother looked at me with the biggest smile on his face and said, come in, it's fine, come in. And the knocking stopped. Absolutely went dead silent. I think baby brother thought it was a joke. He was very young. And I gotta tell you, my life took, let's say, an interesting turn after he said, come in. All right, so it started innocently enough. And the weird part about this is we were in the living room when this happened. But the thing that attached itself to the house, to the trailer, seemed to not like the living room and kitchen. I don't believe any of our family members had ever dealt with it beyond the hall. So we had the kitchen, you entered the trailer in the living room, and then past the couch, there was the hallway where the bedrooms and the bathroom were. It would not come past the hallway line. I don't know why. But anyway, I digress. So nothing happened outside of the knocking stopping for the first little while. I went back to my life thinking the knocking would start up later or that it wasn't a big deal, but it started to be a big deal. One night, I was laying in bed watching TV before I went to sleep for school. Now you have to remember, hello, Megalian, am I saying that right? You have to remember that I did not have a room by myself. In the trailer, my brother shared a room and I shared a room with my mom. So mom and I were in the room together and I felt like I was being pressed on, as though a weighted blanket had pressed on my body. Like the whole thing, from like the tip of my head to my toes. Like I had an extra 200 pounds just weighing me down. And it scared the ever-loving fuck out of me. And I wasn't asleep. I was in the middle of watching a movie with my mom. I'm trying to get her attention. And I'm like, hey, mom. Mom, nope, I was awake. I was absolutely 100% awake. And I'm like, hey, mom. And she's like, yeah. I said, mom, something's pressing on me. And she's like, well, maybe you're just tired, whatnot. And I'm like, no, mom. And I never had sleep paralysis before. So I'm like, mom, there's something pressing on me. She's like, well, sit up. And it took me a while to sit up. And then it just as soon as it came on, it let me go. But it took me 5-10 minutes to sit up the first time. And I was freaked out. And mom's like, it's okay. Trying to give me all these reasons that this was just something that was just weird and it was fine. And all right, so I go back to bed or go to bed that night. Nothing is wrong. I sleep through the night perfectly. Okay, but that's the first time I remember it. But unfortunately, that was not the only time. So occasionally I'd be in my room. I'd be chilling, reading a book or whatever, and I would just feel it pressed down on me. In the daytime, at night, didn't matter. Didn't matter if it was out of sleep, when I was wide awake, doing homework, anything. Just every once in a while, I felt it press on me. I would be so scared in my room that I couldn't sleep without grabbing my mom's hand or her foot. Because our beds were in an L shape, so they met at the corner. Her bed was taller than mine, and I would actually have to grab her foot. Now, mind you, since my baby brother was about 6 when all this went down at first, I was 16 years old. And I was terrified to sleep in my own room. I would actually get out of bed and like lean over my bed on my knees and fall asleep that way because I did not want to be in that room if something happened. One time I was doing my homework for college because this was years later. I'm doing this out of order, kinda. But I was doing my math homework, and my math book was this gigantic purple fucking book. Loved the color, hated the contents. And I felt my feet start to burn because I was leaning over my mom's bed doing my homework. So my legs were on my bed, and my feet were like, you know how you're on your knees, see how your feet are up to the sky? Well, my feet started to burn, and I look down, and my feet are red and bleeding, and I go touch my feet, like go back to touch my feet. My fucking math book flies from my mom's bed, hits the opposite fucking wall in my room. I am so panicked at this point. I'm like scrambling out of my room and ignoring my math book. And one of my brothers came out and said, "What was that noise?" And I said, "My math book hit the wall." And they're like, "Oh, you're tired of it, huh?" And I was like, "No." And I showed them my feet, and they're like, "What the hell? Did you step on something in the bathroom?" And I'm like, first of all, I don't walk, but I do use my feet to stand up to get on the toilet or into a chair or whatnot. And I'm like, "No, there was nothing in the bathroom." I said it just happened. And it was just really weird and freaked out. Just so freaked out. One time the only time I remember anything in the living room, and it wasn't in the living room, was I was playing, I think it was Magic the Gathering with a former cousin of mine. And he and I were across from each other, and everyone else was in the living room. So at the time, everyone else included my mom and two older brothers. My baby brother wasn't there at the time. And as we were playing and just talking and laughing, and my brothers were on a game, mom was watching TV, all of a sudden we heard this scream. And it was the scream as though a man were really, really angry. And the thing about the scream was, like, it was like a screaming yell. That kind of like, ah! And it was weird because it sounded panoramic. As though somebody was literally, like, walking around us screaming. So suddenly you would hear it, like, over there and then on the other side of your ear. But it felt like it was surrounding you. And I heard it, and it freaked me out, and I looked up, and me and my ex-cousin, we locked eyes. And I knew then he had heard it too. Because his eyes got really big, and he's like, "What the fuck?" I'm like, "I don't know." And then I look at our other family members, and my mom is still watching TV, and my two older brothers are still playing games. And it was like the only people in that room who heard it were me and my ex-cousin. I don't know why. I don't know how. But it felt like such a rage scream that it was beyond anything I've ever experienced from anything else I've ever felt in this life. I have no idea what that was. So I slept a lot in the living room because I was afraid. I started seeing shadows like all over by the foot of my bed. I started hearing whispering directly in my fucking ear at night when I would be doing my homework or even listening to music. I'd be on the bed and then I'd hear whispering. It was creepy. It was scary. It got to the point where I didn't even want to be in my room at all, even during the day. And my mom would always be like, "Oh, it's okay." I'm like, "Mom, have you ever heard anything or anything?" And she's like, "No." And I'm like, "Are you sure? Because we share the same room." And she's like, "Yeah, I never heard anything or felt anything." Years later, when we lived in the big house, the house that my grandma used to live in when she moved up here, because the big house across the yard was my great grandma's house. Then my grandma moved in. Then when my grandma died, we had moved in for a while. And when we moved into that house, she told me, well, see, there was this one night I woke up and she said, I felt like somebody was taking their first three fingers on their hand and pressing it into the front of my forehead really, really hard. And she said, I just told them to fuck off and went back to sleep. Or get the fuck out and went back to sleep, something like that. And I'm like, Mom, you never told me this. And she said, well, I didn't want you scared. And I was like, I was already scared, Mom. I was already terrified. As a matter of fact, it would have helped me to know that I wasn't the only one experiencing this shit for the most part. Because for the most part, I was. It felt like that thing attached itself to me in just so many ways. So many things in the house I would experience that nobody else would. I talked to my oldest brother, I think yesterday, a couple days ago, and I asked him if he ever dealt with the thing that was bothering me in the trailer. And he said one time he had woke up and he felt like something had been pressing on his body and that like he was choking. And he said he got really mad and then it went away. And I would say that could be sleep paralysis because he had just woken up. But usually it's more when you're like falling asleep. But the thing is, the fact that he felt like he was being pushed on really hard, that resonated with me a lot because that was what the thing did to me a lot. And I'm not sure what it was. Okay, so one of my other fun memories of this thing was when I was actually in the bathroom. So the back bedroom, you walked all the way down the hallway, was mine and my mom's room. Right next to it, sharing a wall, was the bathroom. So you had to go almost all the way down the hallway to use the bathroom. So I was on the toilet, and there was a mirror like way above the toilet because it's for walking people, not for someone like me. And I look out the doorway of the bathroom, and across the hall is the door for the back porch, which we usually kept shut and locked because the back porch was literally falling off the trailer. It had soft spots in it. I mean, you could actually like go through if you were not careful as to where you went. And here, standing in front of that doorway was, I'm going to say, a man. Well, looked like a man. But it was a little wrong. So the skin looked kind of, I don't want to say waxy, I guess. We'll call it waxy. And the man smiled at me, and his smile was just a little too large for his face. It always seemed like it was human, but just a little bit off. Just an absolutely little bit. And I saw him and I freaked out and I looked away to look back and he was gone. But in the mirror above my head, there was like this weird smoke looking thing in the mirror that was moving. And my head started to feel really fucking hot. And like it was burning. Like I had a really bad sunburn that was just getting worse and worse and worse on my head. And I stayed just petrified. I was frozen. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't, it was like I couldn't move. And this is during the day, mind you, so I was not like exhausted or anything. And we had a cat whose name was Spunky. And she was a calico. And Spunky hated my guts. And you're going to be like, what's the point of this? Well, as it got hotter and hotter, and I'm like starting to cry, No, it doesn't. It got hotter and hotter, and I was starting to cry. Like, not like any sound coming out, just crying. Spunky came zooming down the hallway because I could hear her scrabbling on the linoleum, and she jumped on my lap, looked above my head, and started hissing over and over, hunched up on my lap. And like not even 30 seconds or so after she had jumped on my lap, I felt the burning start to go away. And the stuff in the mirror started to go away. Now, how do I know it was Spunky? Because she was the only cat we had, and a cat did jump on my lap. Unless it was a ghost cat, and me seeing Spunky later, it was Spunky. So after I heard her hissing, and I felt her body tense and hunched, because she was like pressed against my stomach. You can feel when the tension in their little bodies. She actually like jumped off my lap when it was gone, and just slowly sauntered down the hallway. But yeah, she hated me, but that was the only time she ever willingly came to me. Spunky hated me. She would not let me pet her, would not let me touch her. She tolerated the boys, like my brothers, but she loved my mom, but she hated me. She absolutely, and she hated everyone else too who came over. Like, she wouldn't let baby brother touch her, any of the cousins, aunts, uncles, nobody. But she jumped on my lap and she made it go away. And to this day, I have no idea how. I have no idea why. She did not like me. I don't even know how she knew it was happening. I would wake up with scratches on me when all this was going down. Now, I will admit I scratch in my sleep, even as an adult. But the thing about the scratching was it would be 3 long scratches somewhere. And sometimes when I got the scratches, they would be scratches on my body in places I could not reach. So one day I'd have scratches like 4 or 5 inches down the middle of my fucking back. And my mom was like, how the hell did you get scratches there? Were you like rubbing up against something or anything? I'm like, no. Yeah. And I'd have it sometimes on my arms, my chest. It was really freaky. Sometimes I'd feel like I was getting scratched when I was awake. So I ended up with so many different types of scratches. And I couldn't always tell you where they came from. But I gotta tell you, I was not scratching my back in the middle of the night. Or like the backs of my thighs or anything like that. Some places I legitimately cannot reach on my body. I would actually have sometimes weird scratches to the point where I would also get these weird pinch type blood blisters. And it was always in like 3 lines. And it was just really creepy and really bad. Out of nowhere, I would feel like I was being watched sometimes in my room. As though I were alone, and then suddenly I wasn't alone. So that's the kind of stuff that would happen in my world. But one night, this is when this kind of changed for me. So my baby brother was older, and I don't know how old I was. Maybe he was 9. Because by the time I was 21, we had lived in the big house. Or by I turned 21, we lived in the big house. And by the time I was 20, I was dating BJ. So this must have been when I was 19. So from like 16 to 19, I had like 3 years of like ungodly terror. But my baby brother was staying the night. And he slept on the floor in my and mom's room in a sleeping bag on the floor by our beds. And one night he says to me, I feel like something is pressing on me. And I'm like, at first, I know this is going to sound wild, but I was like, no, you don't. Like, because I think I had told him some of my stories and, little kids. And I was just like, no, you don't. It's fine. And he's like, no, really. And I actually, and then he said he felt something move in his hand. I think that's how this started. He was like, something's moving my hand. And he was like moving his hand. So I'm like, no, you don't. And then he was telling me something was pressing on him. And I said, no, you don't. And then I felt over him. Like I put my hand like on his stomach. And I felt the weight there on my hand. And I got really mad because you can fuck with me all you want. You can always fuck with me all you want. I'm a pussy. I will not stand up for me. I will let anybody fuck with me, anybody hurt me. I know I shouldn't. I've gotten better at that in my adult life, but I would let anybody do anything to me. That's one of the bullying things that had happened to me. I was so worn down from all the years of all that happening to me. And I would let anything happen, but when you fuck with my family, I don't let you do that. So I got really fucking mad. And the way it kicked in was I said, leave him the fuck alone. And then clear as day in my ear, I hear, what are you going to do about it? And I just got so mad, so unbelievably mad. And I told it to fuck off and don't come back and you don't fuck with anything of mine. And I was pissed. I was absolutely beyond pissed. Because it was fucking with my baby brother at that point. Now, I talked to my baby brother about this and he said he does not remember that night. He remembers nothing about it. Either fucking with me or being fucked with. He said he does not remember a thing. And I'm like, that is a little weird because that, to me, that was a big night. But to him, I guess maybe it's just another Thursday. I don't know. So after that, it didn't bother me as much. And it kind of aligns because when my mom got angry after she woke up with it pressing on her forehead, it left her alone. When my brother was being, he might have, I don't know. When my oldest brother was being fucked with, he got mad and it left him alone. Most of the time, I was just a scared little bitch. And it fucked with me and wouldn't leave me alone. So after I got mad, it started happening less and less. Like, less bad things were happening to me. And when it started fucking with me, I would tell it, go away, fuck off, all this kind of stuff. And it happened less and less. So I managed to get through the rest of my life in the trailer. But here's the funny part. When it came time to go from the trailer to the big house just across the yard, I did not want to go. And at first I attributed it to wanting to stay in the place that I knew my whole life. Because I didn't want to move into grandma's house and how I knew the trailer was home and all that kind of stuff. And I literally was upset. And by the time I was going to go, I said to my mom, I don't want to leave the trailer. Why do we have to leave the trailer? And then I told her, you know what? I can just spend one more night by myself. Just let me have one more night by myself in my old room. I felt like such a need to go back to my old room. Like I had packed up everything in there, but I felt myself trying to talk my mom into letting me stay in the trailer alone. Now I'm disabled. Me staying alone is not the best idea because I need help, but I could have called them. They were next door, all of that. And mom's like, no, we're not staying. We have to go over there. Because otherwise we're paying to electric bills, to heat bills. It was not a good idea. But I was just telling her one more night. I want one more night in my old room. And she's like, nope, it's time to move out. And I don't know why I argued for that specifically. And I was like, when I get out of the trailer, I'm never going back in it. I knew that for a fact. And I was like, why am I arguing with this? By the time we had moved out, it was early 2021. Or not 2021. I was almost 21. My God. So I was almost 21. Fuck me, that was rough. Okay. So I was almost 21 years old, and BJ was set to move in. And we needed to live in the big house. One of the reasons was because my fiance was coming to live with us and stuff like that. And I wanted him to have enough room to move in with us and everything. But for some reason, I felt the unshakable desire to stay. So I got out of the trailer after fighting with my mom. I got out of the trailer and went into the big house. And I felt such relief that I was actually out of the house, out of the trailer, when I was just begging to stay in it, like not even 20 minutes before. I don't know why that changed. And I never went back to the trailer again. I never went back in there, ever. But the weird thing is, the first whole weekend, or first week or whatever, I think it was the weekend, I was in the big house. I constantly dreamt I was back in my old room, talking to someone. And it sounded like the person was upset with me, that they didn't like me anymore, or that they were trying to get to me and I wouldn't let them. And I really wanted, I was talking to somebody, and over in my dreams. I don't know who it was. And I've never had dreams where I was just sitting in my old room talking to people before. And I'm like, well, maybe it's the pressure, maybe it's the stress. You know, at first I didn't want to leave, so I chalked that up to maybe I was homesick, all of that shit. So then BJ moved in, and I didn't think about it. I didn't think about it anymore. The fact that the dreams had come and they were so vivid, and when BJ moved in and we were doing all this other stuff, well, when summer came around that year, one night, my brother, I think it was the one who passed away, the one brother was at the window, and he said, Manny, because everybody uses my middle name, because my middle name is Toluca Germain Tertelli. So everybody in my family uses my middle name. He's like, Manny, come here. Manny, come here. And I'm like, what? And he's like, do you hear that? And from the trailer, I heard that same fucking angry scream that I had heard the night my ex-cousin and I were playing Magic the Gathering. That same angry, furious scream. And I was like frozen by the window, and my older brother said, do you think he's looking for you? Or do you think it's looking for you? And I said, I don't know, but I'm never going back there again. And I didn't. We lived next door to the trailer from early 2021 to fall of 2023, and I never went back into the trailer for anything. When my brothers would go over, they would go over together. Nobody was ever in the trailer alone after everything that went down. So I think so. I don't know if anybody experienced anything before the trailer was put on it, but I do know my grandma and grandpa bought the trailer from a guy who really didn't want it anymore. And like I said, I don't remember the story. But yeah, we weren't the first people who lived there to hear the knocking. And I was unfortunate enough to find out. That's another thing about this thing, is it came with heat. You know how the trailer wouldn't heat up when my aunt and uncle had lived there, but once my baby brother had told it to come in, this thing came with heat. Like a lot of heat. Like it exuded heat. Like when I had the scratches, sometimes the area would be like inflamed looking with more than just the scratches. So, I always think that like demons come with heat. And I don't know, like I don't know about the religious component. Like I know grandma walked through and blessed it and everything, like the trailer. But I don't know about the religious component. I don't know if this is like opposite to God or whatever. I'm not a Christian person. I used to be. But it was definitely something there. And we had a lot of stuff on the farm. And there was something else in the barn as well that even my great grandmother, for as Catholic as she was, she would not go out to the barn after a while. She would refuse because she actually told my grandmother that there was something out there. And yeah, I got uneasy every once in a while too. But the weird part about the trailer thing is it would not come down the hallway past a certain point. And I don't know why. Although it would be funny if, because remember I told you that crucifix that my grandma had that had the slide off back? That was actually hanging by the wall, or on the wall, that literally led into the hallway. So maybe it wasn't the hallway that stopped this thing so much as like the little exorcism or purification or whatever kit my grandma had hanging on the wall. Because literally that crucifix hung on the wall of the trailer forever. Like literally it was still there when we moved out. So maybe if it wasn't there, it would have actually had full reign of the trailer. I do not know. I don't know what it was. I think it was what they consider a demon. I don't know. But like I said, my mom had at least one run-in with it. She said other things happened, but would never elaborate. So that's what I got. And that is the whole story. From beginning to end. Just like the terror, me sleeping in the living room. I always wondered if it was trying to possess me at one point, or fuck with me, or what. Like I said, I know because I'm a scaredy cat, I'm susceptible. But the first thing I always think of is other things. Like when I wake up with scratches, I'm like, yeah, I scratch in my sleep. Even now I scratch in my sleep. I wake up with like scratches across my face from my nails or whatever. That's why I keep it short. Yeah, I don't know what would have happened. And if it wouldn't have fucked with my baby brother that night, I don't know if I would have just let it happen. Like if I just more and more, I just would have got more and more terrified. And then I would have been, more susceptible to anything. It kept me exhausted. That didn't fucking help. Sometimes I wouldn't fall asleep till noon on the living room floor. Sometimes I'd actually be homesick and I'd be laying on the living room floor just so I could sleep. I had such bad stomach aches and stuff from like being stressed out between all the bullshit at school and all the bullshit that happened when I was trying to go to bed. But yeah, that's literally the whole story. As far as I know it, I didn't ask the ex people in my life what happened there more so I don't know like what happened with my baby brother's father, like my uncle, ex-uncle, like what happened there. If he could provide more insight, I didn't ask, I didn't look. So yeah. Yep, so that's that one. So that would be basically all I have to share with you today. It's a short stream. But we can try to raid somebody if there's someone open for raiding. I'm not going to be one of those people who makes up extra stories or content just to fill some time. It's literally all I had to share. I looked at my notes just now. I will be back on Thursday with either more Cat Quest or Cult of the Lamb. We have, we're gonna raid Sky. Sky is playing Traveler's Rest, which is a game I really like. So that's what we're up to now. And Sky uses they, them pronouns. So if you talk about them, please be respectful. And I will see you all on Thursday for something or other. Take care, everybody. Bye.